talking to Rob McCarthy, who's the president of the Old Lyme Fire Department and a former chief, John Nickerson, who's a former chief, and Mick McCarthy, who's also a former chief.
No,
and
not chief.
No, sorry, okay.
No.
Mick McCarthy, who's a longtime member and Rob's father, and it would be great if you could just tell me a little bit about your service. So I'll start with you, Rob.
Okay, so I joined the fire department as a junior in 1982. As a junior member through high school, I did go away for college for a few years, but still stayed connected and active. And when I came back, I was able to move back to Old Lyme and moved up, became an officer, moved up in the ranks. I was chief of the department in the 2004-ish time frame, and I've been the president now for about the last 10 years.
Great. John, would you tell us about your career?
Yeah, I joined initially joined the South End Fire Department in 1974 as a junior. I joined the Old Lyme Fire Department in 1976. As a junior, I served as the chief of the junior fire department. And during those years, I then went to college and got a degree in fire science because of my active involvement in the fire service. So I got my degree in fire protection. Then I continued being active and became a junior officer and worked my way up to being a chief of the organization. And spent some number of years as the chief, and then now I'm just a retired firefighter.
You're a guiding light. Yeah. How about you, Mick?
Well, as we said before with the junior department, I used to live on Lime Street, so as kids we used to hang around the firehouse every time the horn went off anyway. So when I was older, we joined the original junior fire department. I believe I was made a senior member in, I think it was 61 or 62 in that thing. So I got over 60 years in there. And I was in the military for a couple of years, and of course then came back into the fire department. And I was up as far as I was captain at one time, which years ago was third officer. And then, of course, I was lieutenant before that. And then I got the job as steward for the last, I don't know how many years.
100, I think.
Forever, I think. Probably 25 or 30.
Is it fair to say you never retire from the fire department?
No, you never retire.
Yeah.
Not really.
It's always part of your life, and it's been an
Right.
important part, right?
And the whole family, of course, is fire department orientated.
Your family, yes, wonderful.
Not just members of the fire department, but they were plumbers, they were electricians, they were engineers, and they brought those professions to our firehouse and made our organization very strong. So my view from my memory is the people and how great we were because of the people.
Rob, how about you?
I'm kind of a similar mindset that I grew up as a kid, and my father was a member, when I was growing up, and so I spent a lot of time as a young person at the firehouse, and learning, and seeing what everybody was doing and how that, made the fire department a better place because they all brought all their skill sets and, and contributed in the ways that they could, and so definitely, having that as just a learning experience as a child, but then growing up and becoming a member of the fire department as well.
So family affair.
Yeah.
And how about you?
Yeah, it sounds. Of course, like he said, being my son, my father was a fireman too. So, you know, there's 2 or 3 different generations there. Plus I've got grandkids that were
Yeah.
also in the fire department.
So, must have been a pretty proud moment when you joined up. What do you remember? What you felt like when you first were? You get sworn in? How does it? How does that work?
Not so much sworn in, and it's at a regular business meeting that you get voted into the membership. And yeah, so it is. You know, it's a moment that you do remember for sure.
And is there an apprenticeship or a learning period before you get voted in?
A probationary period that so you get voted in initially as a probationary member. It can be 6 months or longer, depending on some training to do. But within 6 months, you can be voted into full membership at that point.
Okay.
And for those that grew up in it, and I grew up as a junior member, so when you're 15, you can join and be a member. So I joined when I first turned 15, and was able to. And then when you turn 18 or graduate high school, you're able to become a senior member.
Can you remember what you felt like, Rob, when you were voted in?
Yeah, it was definitely a very memorable time, and and being able to then participate and be an actual part of the fire department instead of just a kid hanging around. So yeah.
Yeah. And the junior department was established, was it in 1960? Is that right? Do I have the date wrong? Maybe it's earlier. Was any of you
Actually,
involved?
The junior department was in the 50s.
Okay.
I'd say, because I was in the original juniors, I'd say it was probably 56, 57,
Okay.
somewhere in there.
And what was the origin of that establishment of the junior fire department? What led to that? Do you remember?
Well, I think it was the older members, just the kids hanging around the firehouse, and
Yeah.
they said we ought to have them, be junior members or something. That was at the old town hall. That's where the old fire department used to be.
Well, I mean, that sounds like it makes a lot of sense. Were you a junior member, John?
Yep, I joined when I was first able in my age group in 1976. I joined the Old Lyme Fire Department, and I was a junior and spent a number of years in the junior organization until I moved on to being a senior member.
And do you remember what you felt like when you were voted into as a regular member?
There's definitely a feeling of pride. Going back in that window of time in my life, the firehouse was an important role model for me. I was in high school and I was in a position where the members there, just taught you some skills. They taught you respect. They taught you the respect for the equipment. There was the authority in the chain of command. Those kind of skill sets, when being taught at that age, played out the rest of my life, because it had you respect the authority of the members, the senior members, the officers. So I found that very helpful as I grew up, as time went on.
Mm-hmm. And the organization now is multi-generational, right? So you have people of all ages that are involved.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I say, aside from the authority, just that experience of being, somebody who's 15, 16 years old, and you're working with or helping out people who are of all ages, that have had all that experience, and so but you're working side by side with them, accomplishing tasks, and whether it's cleaning up to fighting a fire. So.
Mick, what do you remember? What's your proudest moment of being associated with the fire department?
Oh, I don't know. That's kind of hard to say.
So maybe
Yeah.
there are more than one.
Oh yeah. I mean, there was a lot of memories and a lot of.
That's what I want to tap into, the memories. So maybe big fires, or those things you want to forget. I suppose you learn from these experiences, right?
Oh yeah. You always learn from each one.
But this book contains some pretty harrowing stories. How about you, John?
As a fire chief, there is one
Yeah.
fire it's not in the book,
Okay.
but it's had an impact on me. It was a fire, and we aggressively had to fight the fire. It was on our arrival. It was burning pretty good,
Uh-huh.
and we did multiple tasks that day. We had an interior attack. We had to go up on the roof, and we had to trench the roof to hold the fire into one section of this rather large home. And the fire was held in check. At the same time, we had members go in and take out a bunch of furniture from the building. And we call that salvaging out the building. So they
Okay.
salvaged out by bringing all this furniture out and covering it with salvage covers in the front yard, and because that's what we do, as the fire service. So the fire was out, put out, and the next day the homeowner contacted me and says, I don't know if you know, but the guys that pulled all that furniture out covered up a piece of furniture that was on the back of my great-great-great-grandfather's wagon train that went to the West Coast.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
was turned over to me. And to me, that's what it was all about. Yes, saving lives is very important,
Sure.
but every now and then you get these little nuggets that come back to you, and you realize that, if you do everything the way you're trained for, you made some people really happy.
That's a wonderful memory. How about you, Rob? Anything like that? That's pretty hard to measure up.
That is, and,
Yeah.
it's more about, there's a lot of different, as you're asking the question, a lot of different either, fires to, accidents to the unique situations of, we had not just the railroad bridge catching on fire, but we had a barge that actually broke free one time and got stuck against it, and having to figure out how we're going to get the barge freed up. And just having to deal with a situation that, isn't something that you'd ever think of before, but, having to overcome that. And, there's a whole group of people that do that, as, together. And so that's what, it's just, there's different experiences and then learning from it and being able to, do it again next time.
And how can you train for all these different kinds of experiences? The one you described, John, the one you described, Rob. I mean, how do you learn to trench the roof? Where does that training come?
That comes as part of your firefighting training. During my window of being active in the fire department, there was a major change where the Connecticut Fire Commission set up trainings and had what they call the Firefighter 1 class and a Firefighter 2 class, and a lot of those programs brought a lot of that type of training forward, and many of our members partook in that kind of training. So it really makes operating on a scene. All you have to do is tell them what to do. They know how to do it.
And is that mandated, the training?
It is. You can answer this question better than I. It's really not mandated,
Yeah.
but you have to have certain training to be able to be an interior structural firefighter,
Okay.
because there are regulations for the safety of firefighters, and part of them being safe is to be trained.
I want to ask you about the water signs that are available now throughout the town, the W's. Those are recent development. Were any of you involved with that project?
Yes, so they came about because of both NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, has lots of different guidelines for how you're supposed to do various things, as well as insurance ratings. And it was more about the insurance rating program that wanted us to make sure that all of our water sources, we had identified all of our water sources in town, which are, ponds and streams if they can support it. And we had books that had all of it listed in it, but they wanted us to actually have that water source signed so that anybody, whether it's the middle of the night or even a department coming from another town, would be able to find it. And so we had to put those signs up to identify where they were located. And it's more about insurance, driven by the insurance program than anything.
But it must be very useful.
Yes, and actually talking about insurance, that's a whole other topic, which is in the book a little bit, but John can go on about it from the early 90s.
The fire wells.
Yes.
The fire wells were identified. There was always signs for fire wells, and there was different fire wells in different locations of town. But when the community, and when I say the fire service community in Old Lyme, made the decision to what we call comply or challenge the Insurance Services Organization standards, we wanted them to come in and evaluate us, is what we did. So we say we challenged them. By bringing them in to evaluate us, then we could lower the insurance rating for the community, which would impact every taxpayer. So this has been something that during my junior officer time, it was talked about a lot. During my chief period, I was very fortunate that I had some very aggressive junior officers that they went out and they looked at these fire wells, and every Sunday morning they'd be driving around with a wheel, and they would measure out from the fire well, and they would mark how far away they would go, and we matched it with the hose that we carried on our hose tender truck, so that we would know where to lay it out. And we started doing this all manually, and then at the same time we were very fortunate. Valley Shore, our dispatch center, started to work with computers, so we started to be able to program in to their water supply network over there what houses and what addresses were covered by these fire wells, which allowed us to have water sources in a fire. So all of this was taking place, and we eventually did. And when you did ask about a proud moment, one of those proud moments is about how hard the membership worked to make this happen, and to be the day we actually were told that they had come, we had demonstrated, they had looked at our records, and then we found out that they had lowered us from a class 9 to a class 6 community. We actually had citizens call up and say thank you because they got a refund on their insurance. So that was a proud moment.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Beyond fire wells, and more goes into that, like the Boughton Road Station was part of that rating, that in order to have better coverage in that part of town, that station was built, largely for insurance reasons, but to have coverage there and house fire apparatus there. And so then also the makeup of your fire apparatus goes into that insurance calculation as well. And and that's something that there's always been an apparatus committee that's part of the Old Lyme Fire Department that looks at which the age of all of our pieces and how they all fit in and where they're located and what each piece can do. So
Well, I'll take this occasion to say thank you, because I've actually seen those wells work. We had a big fire up on Meeting House Lane maybe a year ago.
yeah, that's not exactly.
Is that about right? And
Yeah.
they were using the pond of the golf course and running the water up Johnny Cake Hill Road and then up Meeting House Lane, and it was just amazing to watch how successful it was and how hard everybody was working and how everybody seemed to know what to do. It was very reassuring to
So that house was 2,100 feet away from the pond, and we carried 2,200 feet of hose on the truck that made the 5-inch hose down to the
It
pond.
was amazing.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Yeah, that was really, and the big pumper hose. It's just amazing.
Mhm.
So I look at that pond very differently now. It's not a place that swallows my golf balls. It's a place that's keeping my house safe. Yeah. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about the fraternity. If there's a big family aspect, there's fellowship, multi-generational. What goes on at the firehouse? I know you're working on equipment. You're cleaning things, making sure everything's in shape. Are you having organizational meetings? What is life like to someone who's not been a fireman? What goes on in the firehouse? Who wants to answer that question? Maybe.
So then on a regular basis,
You,
he can
Yeah.
answer it too. Right now on a regular basis, and every Wednesday night we're there, and there's a monthly meeting, monthly business meeting, the third Wednesday of every month. And generally every other Wednesday we're there, we're doing either training, maybe some form of a meeting or cleaning up things, doing truck checks to if there's other maintenance that's needed, we've got a plan for that too. So that's the planned stuff every Wednesday. Officers meetings, there's something the first Monday of every month. The officers have a meeting, and then of course there's other various fire calls and other things that need to be accomplished.
how is recruitment coming for younger members?
It's pretty good, highly variable. You go through different cycles because we do have the junior program. Every once in a while we'll get a group of younger kids that come from the high school, and either they're kids that grew up in the fire department and one or two of them plants a seed with a few more, and so we'll get a group of them that'll come through. We've got a small group in their early 20s right now, so we've got a decent younger chunk of the fire department, and every once in a while we'll get a little bit older guys that'll come in that have had some experience. Either they moved into town or they find some time in their life and they'll come out and want to participate. So we're doing okay, but definitely it's a struggle. People don't have as much time these days, and especially daytime is that where getting guys to come out daytime for fire calls is probably the biggest challenge right now.
I'll bet. Your former chiefs, all of you, do you ever really retire from the fire department? Or do you just you're still involved, Mick?
Well, I don't do what I used to do now. I'm retired from the fire department, more or less,
But you're still attached to it, right?
oh yeah.
And you're still involved?
Oh yeah. But I still go around once in a while. Not as active as I used to be. I can't do the things that I used to be able to do, but it's you have lifetime friends too there, and so it's hard to just walk away.
It's like a family.
Right.
That's a family within a family.
It is a family.
Yeah.
And probably spend more time at the firehouse than we used to than we did at home.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But
Well-
times change too, but it's a good, it's a good organization. I mean,
Oh, it's wonderful.
and not just Old Lyme. I mean, you got Lyme, you got East Lyme, you got Saybrook. You get to know other people and you work with them.
And
And
there's mutual assistance?
mutual aid
Yeah.
things, and you train. I mean, we used to know. I mean, I used to know quite a few people in the Saybrook Fire Department. Of course, they're older now and not as active as we used to be.
And
But,
do you still participate in the Memorial Day parade?
Oh,
that kind of
sure.
thing? Okay.
But like when we had South End Fire Department, when we were younger, I was a member of South End plus Old Lyme. And then as I worked a lot up in Lyme, so I was a member of Lyme Fire Department. I wasn't an active member, but I used to go to the fires if I was up there.
Okay.
Because the chief said to me, you better join because you got to be covered by insurance. So I was a member of all three of them at one time.
Except when they said, "Where's Mick?" Well, he's at the firehouse. It was difficult to figure out which
Couldn't
one.
figure out where I was.
Yeah. How about you, John? What?
It was the same thing, Mick, when we talk about joining the firehouse before, as a junior, I actually joined the South End Fire Department when I was 14 years old. So I started as a junior in South End because it was just a difference, you could join at 14 in South End, but you could join at 16 in Old Lyme. So at one time I was a member of both Old Lyme and South End, then I was a member of Flanders, and as a young man I was always looking to be involved with the fire service and many of the things Mick just mentioned as a young officer, as an officer, and then as a chief. I was very involved with our mutual aid companies, and we would go mutual aid, and we would share command responsibilities, and we were working very closely with the Saybrook fire chief at the time. If I was in Saybrook, he would give me command activity. I would give him command activity if he was in Old Lyme. So that's the closeness of the organizations.
So it's a fraternity.
It definitely, and it's not just Old Lyme. It's
The
a
shoreline?
fraternal fire service. Yeah.
Very voluntary, yeah.
And do you think that the young members today, Rob, have that same kind of commitment? And I know you mentioned time as a problem.
Yeah, and for the most part, yeah. And, because it's, a lot of the younger guys, a few of them, are talking about making a career out of it, trying to find jobs, actual jobs, not just doing it as a volunteer, in some of the cities. Or, they've also grown up in it too. And so, yeah, they're definitely committed to it the same way. It's probably the newer people that come in that haven't necessarily grown up in it that, they don't necessarily have that full sense of it, but they get it over time. So.
And when you look back over your career, all three of you, do you sense that citizens are more fire aware, more safety aware? There must have been some situations where you saw things where people did something pretty silly or pretty dangerous that created a problem. But it seems like there's a lot of good communication about just making people aware of fire safety. I happen to be very aware of it. But how about you, Mick? Do you think people are smarter and safer these days?
Well, over the years, I think, too, with the, like your zoning and everything, we used to have a lot of fires down the beaches and everything, in the wintertime especially. And it was because, a lot of times, it was because of the wiring in the houses and different things like that. And now you got your building inspectors, stuff like that, that they go in there and, they make sure that things are done right and everybody's got a license to do this stuff. Before, the people used to do some stuff that, wasn't really up to
Wasn't
par.
up to code.
Right.
Yeah.
And John can remember some of the beach fires we used to have every winter. We'd have 2 or 3 cottages burning all over the place, and it was because of the code. It was because of the, just the way they were built and the way they were maintained. And nowadays it's a lot different. We very rarely have a wintertime structure fire down there.
That's good news.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, you've seen over time, we've seen the codes get stronger, both the building code and the fire code. And I think your statement about awareness also, I do believe we're more aware as a society of fire safety. And that goes with smoke detectors in the homes. They're there's a building code that puts them in the home now. But there's also an awareness from the fire service through fire prevention and education, saying change your batteries so that the batteries don't go, if they go dead, so your smoke detectors will work. So there is an awareness that I think has been heightened over the last 25 years. So that if there's a smoke detector activates, people are alert. So if they do have a fire, it can be in a situation where it's not as risky to their lives. Not that it wouldn't be, but with the smoke detector would get them alerted so they could be out of the home. So I do see the society changing.
Oh, yeah.
And the fire department does its part. I've seen the signs about replacing,
Yes.
when I've driven by the firehouse, I've seen the signs out front saying it's time to replace your batteries. Yeah. So how do you interact with the community? I'll ask you, Rob. What's the overall driving force? I mean, you're providing an important public service. You're keeping us all safe. But how do you interact with the community at large?
It does vary a bit. We do have fire prevention annually. There's a fire prevention open house that not only we have the open house here at Lyme Street Fire Station, but we go into the schools, and so we try and get that message out to the kids in the schools, at the elementary schools in particular. We're just teaching them about things about fire safety, and gets them to also say, hey, there's the open house, and get the parents to bring the kids, and so we interact with them at that. We have a good relationship with Town Hall as far as between Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen, and not just about funding, but about what is going on in the community, and and messages that need to get out, or things that are going are happening. And there's still definitely those times where we go to somebody's house because they've called the fire department, and we show up and they don't really know that we're volunteers. So that still does occur at times that they're like, oh, that station down there's nobody there 24/7, and we're like, no, we came from our houses too, and we got there, got a truck, and we're here now. So there's still that message doesn't get out to everybody, but but it's for the most part, the townspeople are great, and most of our interactions are good with everybody.
Thank you. I want to address this to you, Mick, to start, and that is looking back as over your career and being a chief. What are the qualities that you most want to see in the members of the Old Lyme Fire Department?
Well, I think that's a difficult question, because everybody, like John said before, there's so many different occupations and people. I think that's hard to really nail down, because you might get one guy, like we used to have a doctor, we had engineers, different occupation. It's very hard to qualify, I think.
Let me twist the question around. We don't have to mention names here, but were there ever situations where you thought someone was not a good fit for the fire department?
Well, you get people that, we've had people join that, wanted to do something for the community, and they really didn't fit in.
Okay.
If you know what I mean.
Yes.
They wanted to be a fireman, but they hang around for 6 months to a year, and pretty soon they disappear.
So they get the message.
Well, they just
They see it doesn't fit.
they didn't fit. That's it. You know what I mean?
But we shouldn't dwell on that, if you don't mind me saying it this
Sure.
way. We shouldn't dwell on that, because the volunteer organization usually has a job for everyone.
Yeah.
everybody doesn't have to be an interior structural firefighter, you know, to run the volunteer organization. There's all kinds of things that happen in the firehouse. You know, you have administrative things that need to be done. There's committee work that can be done. And so if you step back and you look at each person that comes in the firehouse, they have strengths and weaknesses. And as a good officer, you look at those strengths and weaknesses and you find the position for them within your organization where they can then grow and be a member, you know. And sometimes it's just being a purchasing agent. Sometimes it's just being a person that's your liaison with the town hall. So, you know, it doesn't have to be that they're putting the gear on every day. So, you know, so just looking back at how you asked that question, what we try to do is give every person the right job in the volunteer organization.
That's a wonderful message and a wonderful way of operating. I want to follow up and ask you, is it the responsibility of the chief and of the officers to make those assessments and to guide the people?
I think it's all the leadership of the fire department, because I think the chief and his officers see people when they come into the probation area. However, the president of the company may see roles and responsibilities that support the executive side of the fire department, where a member might be stronger. So I do believe it's both the operational and executive branches of the department to look where a person fits in and help them see where they fit in.
It's great. What would you like people who see this to carry away from your recollections? What are important messages for the viewers to remember about the Old Lyme Fire Department? I was looking at you, Rob. That's the president.
You know, just the overall commitment, dedication that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, the history that there is from, you know, the originating members of the fire department to today, that, you know, there's always been some incredible forethought into things that were either constructed, planned for, you know, from the buildings, the apparatus, and to the people. And it's all the people that, you know, that have done that over the last 100 years. And, you know, the ones that I can remember are amazing, you know, what everybody has done, and it's the time and dedication that everybody puts into it that, you know, that has made the department what it is and makes it what it is for the town of Old Lyme.
And what can the community, last question, what can the community, what would you like the community to do to help support what you're doing, your ongoing programs? How can I help?
Fill out an application.
You mean I'm not too old?
No,
Okay.
I'll go back to what I just previously said.
Yeah, I heard you.
Yeah, and you know, John said about there is a role that everybody can do. From, you know, on the executive side is more the president, treasurer, secretary, you know, a steward, you know, someone who just wants to come in and
Okay.
make sure that people are fed at times when we need to be fed. You know, that's a role, and anyone can do it pretty much.
That's great. We didn't talk about the auxiliary, but we've run out of time. I want to thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts, your history, your memories. And we're going to wrap this up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.